I'd like to invite you to time travel with me this morning. We're going to go all the way back to 2011. Not really that far. So it's 2011, a Saturday morning, January 22nd. I was living in Tallahassee, Florida, and it was 4:30 a.m. Ring, ring. The phone rang. I answered, hello? Elizabeth, wake up. This is Alicia. Hi. I'm at the hospital. A young mom just came in and gave birth to a healthy baby girl. She can't parent, and she's interested in open adoption. Are you and Eric interested? What a phone call. 4:45 a.m., I was on the phone with my social worker. Jackie, it's Elizabeth. You sound like you're awake, Jackie. She said, well, you sound like you're awake too, Elizabeth. I said, well, we just got a phone call from a friend at the hospital. There's a healthy baby girl, and she's interested in adoption. Are we going to be home study ready? She said, Elizabeth, I've been up for the past hour working on your home study. I haven't been able to sleep tonight, and I know you need your home study soon. I didn't know you needed it this soon, but it will be ready for you on Monday morning. 5:30, I got a call from our daughter's birth mother. Talk about an unusual conversation. We talked, got to know each other. She told me her story. I told her our story. And after about 30 minutes, she said, okay, you want to move forward with this? I said, yeah. Do you? She said, yeah. So we made a plan that my husband and I would go up and meet her later that morning. 6 a.m., I'm on the phone with the attorney who says, it's Saturday morning. Can I call you back at 9, please? I said, yes, okay, fine. So 7 a.m., I finally kicked my husband out of bed. I said, Eric, you need to get up. This thing is really happening. He had been trying to, I don't know, ignore it or deny it, or maybe he thought he was dreaming, but this was really happening. So I kicked him out of bed at 7 a.m. At 11 a.m., the two of us got together and we went up to the hospital and we met our little bitty baby daughter and her beautiful birth mother for the first time. One of the most, I've told this story so many times, I still get choked up. One of the most profound experiences of my life, to meet the woman who was going to give me the greatest gift of my life, although I didn't know it at the time. As we're talking and getting to know each other and sharing our stories, and she's explaining why she is unable to parent, but she knows that she wants her daughter to have a good life. And so, of course, we're telling her about us and our long fertility journey and our deep, deep desire to be parents. And we hugged, we said goodbye, and we went home and waited. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited. It was like the longest 24 hours of my life. We finally got a call at 3 o'clock on that Sunday afternoon, and it was our attorney. And granted, we'd been talking with the attorney, and she had been getting appropriate counseling from the social workers at the hospital. And at 3 o'clock, they called and said, this is going to happen. Pack your bags, meet us at the hospital in 90 minutes. So from 4:30 a.m. on Saturday morning to 4:30 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, that's how fast I became a mom. So why am I telling you this story when I'm here to talk about networking? You're probably going, okay, that's a really personal story. What does it have to do with what we're talking about today? There are some key players in that story that I met through networking. The first is my husband. Pretty key player. We've now been happily married for almost 13 years, but I met him in 2002. I was living in Asheville, North Carolina, which is why I love hiking in the mountains of North Carolina. And we met at a festival. It was a big street festival, music, food, juried arts and crafts, the whole big shebang. And I was new to the city. I was volunteering with the Asheville Coaches Alliance, because I've been a coach for 17 years. And our group had decided that we were going to volunteer at the festival and work in the VIP tent. So we were interacting with all the sponsors. We were giving them food and beer and, hey, do you guys have everything that you need? And I was handing out, I don't know, a beer or wine or something to somebody, and then all of a sudden this tall blonde guy comes up and he's like, "Hey, I'm Eric." I'm like, "Hi." And he said, "Well, I'm your beverage guy for the weekend. What do you need? And, let me get you stocked up." And I thought, you can be my beverage guy anytime. And so we hung out a little bit that weekend, and he called me probably about 5 days later, and he had actually contacted a friend of mine and gotten my phone number, and he called me for a date, and the rest is history. So I would have never met him if I hadn't been there on a mission of service with my colleagues, contributing to our community. The second key player in that story is the earth angel who picked up the phone and called us from the hospital. She'll always be very, very special to us. She was a friend from church. And we had been through a long fertility journey, surgery, drugs, pregnancy, miscarriage, the whole 9 yards. 5.5 years, really long, painful journey. And our church family knew about it. And the best advice we'd been given when we had decided to adopt was tell everybody that you know. So we stood up one Sunday in church and we said, "Thank you all for your support and your love and your prayers. We appreciate it, and we're switching gears. No more the traditional fertility journey. We're going on the adoption path." And she was in the sanctuary that day. She heard our plea and she heard our request. And it was about 4 months later that she picked up the phone and called us. If that isn't a divine thing, I don't know what is. And the third key piece of the story is the social worker, Jackie. We found her because I was a member of so at the time we were living in Tallahassee, Florida. Sorry, I've talked about North Carolina, Florida, Houston. I've moved a lot in my life, probably 10 times in 25 years. And so I was a member of the Tallahassee Chamber, and I was a member of our leads group, and we met every week. And so that group knew me really well. They knew us intimately. They knew our story of loss. And when I stood up and announced that we were looking to adopt, and did anyone know a social worker, I had a couple of people come up and they said, "Oh, you've got to get to know Jackie. She's wonderful, and she'll really help you." So if you think about it, I was in all three completely different situations, and yet found really key connections with people who became part of my life story and helped me achieve my greatest goal ever, which was to become a mama. And so that's why I wanted to share that story with you today. And that's what I want us to talk about as we talk about networking and relationship building and cultivating your tribe. Because those relationships that you have, you never know where they're going to take you. And so often when we come into a work-type networking situation, we assume that we're talking about work, but it can be so much more. It can be so much more with that. And so the people that I know who are successful at networking, they know three things. They know that you have to show up and be real and authentic. They know that it's not one size fits all. There's not just one way to network. There's a lot of different ways, and you've got to find what works for you. And the third thing that those folks do is they embrace networking as a way of life. And so that's what I want us to talk about today. Let's talk first about the being real and being authentic and being vulnerable. And I just shared a little bit of that with my story with you that I was able to share in a fairly public place, at church, at my chamber leads group. But I knew these people. I had relationships with them, and I was able to share and say, this is my heart's desire, this is where we are, this is what's going on, and people were able to receive it. The more you show up as real and authentic in your interactions with people, the deeper you'll be able to go with people faster. And such a great example with Debbie, actually, and I did not know that she had 9 adopted children, but when she got the email from me, and I said, "Oh, well, I'm adopted too, and I have 11 brothers and sisters," and she said, "Oh my goodness, my children are adopted." And so suddenly it's like, oh, we have that in common, and we have that connection and something that we can talk about. When I think about clients that I've had over the years, one comes to mind. She was a client from North Carolina days. She's now up in New Jersey. She's a muralist, very successful artist, does schools and airports and hospitals, big artwork. And she was a coaching client of mine, and she would come to coaching sessions, and she'd be in her painter pants, and her hair would all be pulled up, and she'd kind of be a little bit of a mess, but she'd pull herself together and come in, and we'd talk about networking, because I used to teach a lot of networking classes, and she'd say, "Oh, Elizabeth, I can't go to a chamber event like this," and I said, "Why not?" "Well, but look at me." I said, "Well, okay, maybe you can comb your hair and put a little lipstick on, but wear the painter pants. Show up as who you are. You've just spent 8 hours in the studio. Show up as authentically who you are. So I challenged her. I said, one day, Karen, one day I want you to go to one chamber event, show up straight from the studio in your painter pants, see what happens. Do you know, she called me that next morning. She said, Elizabeth, oh my gosh, it was so awesome. All these people started coming up to me and they said, oh my gosh, who are you and what are you doing? Why are you wearing those pants? What are you doing? Oh, I'm an artist too. And she said, it was such a wonderful opportunity for people to connect with me just because I wore my painter pants. So think about that for you, for yourself. What is it that you love? What are you passionate about? What do you care about? Do you have a dozen grandchildren that you want to tell the world about? Have a purse. Well, guys, sorry, you can't do this. But the women, have a purse made with pictures of all your grandkids on it or your kids. Are you a runner? Do you love to run? Do you love to travel? Do you love to ski? What is it that you're passionate about? And the more you can share that and bring that into your interactions with people, it opens the doorway to conversations. And conversely, ask people about those things. Now that we're getting into summertime, when I meet people for the first time, early on in our conversation, I'll say, so, summer's coming. You going any place fun? You going to do any vacation? And if they say, oh, I'm going here or there, we get to talk about travel. We say, oh, I'm going to stay home and do a staycation. Well, we talk about what's going on here in Houston and what are the opportunities and where are you taking your kids. So you see how just those little entry points can lead to deeper and more meaningful conversations with people. So making sure that you're showing up and being real and authentic in your conversations is so key. The next thing I want to talk about is this notion that networking is not a one-size-fits-all deal. I remember when I first was new in business and I had moved to Asheville, North Carolina. I was living in Philadelphia prior to that. And people said, oh, you got to join this group and you got to join this and you got to do this. And I said, I don't got to do anything. What I got to do is find what feels good. And so that's always my advice to people is if you want to be a joiner, which is a great way to connect with people, go try out a lot of different groups. I know a couple of you said you're new here today, right? Let me see, show of hands, 2 or 3 or 4 of you are new today? Huh, you're new today. Were you new today? Yeah, okay. Okay, don't be shy, guys. So, try new groups and see what works for you. Try things on for size. And if it doesn't feel right the first time, maybe try it a second time just to give it another chance. Maybe it wasn't the right mix of people or it wasn't the right day or the speaker was lousy. Hopefully you're not going to say that about today. And try it and see what feels good to you. But you've got to find the places where you want to settle in, the people that you want to connect with. There's lots of different groups you can join. Of course, chamber groups are always wonderful, and I love, 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 love chambers because they give lots of options. You've got breakfast options, you've got lunch options, you've got evening options, you have social events. Some are more, professional development focused, come and learn a skill. So you have lots of opportunities to learn and to connect with people. So try different things. But also think about service organizations. Are any of you in here a member of Rotary or Lions or Kiwanis? Okay, Steve, you are, great. So whenever you can do some service work, that's always good. And then of course hobbies. If you're a runner, go join the running club. My husband's a tree hugger. He's an environmental guy. So he's a member of, I live in Missouri City, so he's a member of Missouri City Green. And he's very involved. He's on the board and he's out doing recycling and trash pickups and electronics recycling and all that kind of stuff. And he's made some wonderful friends and some great business connections because he's pursuing his personal passions. So, volunteer, get involved, join groups. That's a great way to connect. But if you're not a joiner, because it's not for everybody, be a connector. Be a connector. If you're someone who enjoys meeting people and you say, oh, I just met Susie over here and I met John over here and they have this common interest, let me connect the two of them. Whether it's you do an email introduction, that's always great, but I love bringing people together. I just brought some friends together who are writers. They'd never met each other. They were both writers, a little introverted, don't really like the networking thing. And because I'm like, come to my networking groups. And they're like, yeah, I don't know, Liza, that's not really my thing. I said, okay, well, how about let's have lunch? So the three of us sat and had lunch and we talked about writing our books for 2 hours probably. So it was a great way to connect, and then now they have forged this new friendship. So when you can be a connector and bring people together, host parties, host gatherings, because people love it. Don't you love it when someone invites you? They say, hey, you want to come to my party, or you want to come to lunch, or come to this meeting with me. I want you to come and engage with me. Okay? And then, of course, if you're not a joiner and if you're not a connector, just be yourself, what I talked about at the beginning. Be organic, be real, be authentic, and share yourself. One of my favorite clients, who's also a friend, who was actually my realtor when I first moved here to Texas, she's not really a joiner, and she's so busy because she works so hard. But let me tell you, this woman is so present and so authentic. Her integrity is impeccable. She's one of those women that you know if she gives you her word, she's going to follow through on it. And she has built a thriving business. She's one of the top 10 producers. She works for Gary Green, Better Homes, one of the top producers nationally for them, because she is so good at that, just one-on-one connection. When she's with you, she's present. And she might be on to 10,000 other different things, but when she's with you, she's right there. And I just admire that so much. So as you're thinking about your connections and your networking style, my invitation to you is this, is if you're someone who normally goes to meetings and maybe you go 1 or 2 chamber events a month and that's it, try something new this month. Maybe you met someone and you're like, wow, they were really interesting. Or maybe you met 2 or 3 people. Send them an email and say, hey, I met a bunch of you at the last chamber meeting. Anybody interested in going to lunch? Let's get a couple of us together. It doesn't have to be all the people that you met, but you throw out an invitation and see who bites. And you'll never know what relationships can come from that. So I invite you to just try something a little different this next month and see what works for you. So I just have one last tip, because I know we're just about out of time here. So before I wrap up, I just want to let you know I would love to stay connected with you guys. I don't have business cards with me because they're at the printers right now. So if you would like to stay connected with me, please give me your business card afterwards. I have a weekly newsletter that I send out. You can also find me on Facebook. I spend a lot of time on Facebook, and LinkedIn. Those are probably the 2 places where I spend the most time. And I just want to remind you, social media is such a great way to stay connected with people. And my husband always kind of shakes his head. He's a corporate guy. He goes, how do you do business off of Facebook? I said, Eric, I was sitting watching The Voice last year, and I was on my phone kind of flipping through Facebook, and I got a private message from someone who said, Elizabeth, I've known you for 9 years. We've been friends all this time. I've kept up with you. I've followed your journey. I'm finally ready to start my own business. I'm ready to hire you. I can't imagine anyone else that I would want to be my coach. So here at 9 o'clock at night, as I'm watching The Voice, I'm like, all right, let's set up our appointment tomorrow morning. And she's been a coach for the past year, or a client for the past year. So you never know where that business is going to come from and where those connections are going to come from. And that's really my last point. It's all about networking as a way of life. The best networks that I know, the people who are most successful, they embrace networking as part of what they do when they wake up in the morning, part of how they go through their whole day, and as they get ready to go to sleep at night. Because it's not a chore or it's an activity. It's part of who you are. I think a lot of times why networking gets a bad rap is people think, oh, I have to go and introduce myself and get business. And it's not about that. It's about going and saying, hi, so nice to meet you. Tell me about yourself. Let me tell you about you. What are you working on? How can I help you? How can I support you? And building those relationships. And when you build a foundation of those long-term relationships, it will radically transform your life. And as you heard with my story, if networking can help me become a mom, it can help you with any dreams and any goals that you have. So thank you all so much.